Welcome back to another deep dive. Today's source is, it's a bit unusual for us.
Yeah, a little bit of a curveball.
Right. Usually we're sifting through hundreds of pages of research or dense articles, expansive books, trying to pull out the key takeaways for you.
A heavy lifting.
Exactly. But today we're looking at something much, much shorter. It's an excerpt from a piece called The Architecture of the Inner Warrior by Franck Canondry. That's from Self-Esteem Motivation. And it's barely over 100 words long.
Which is a complete departure from our normal stack of material.
Yeah.
But as we were reading through it, we realized it actually serves as a really tight psychological framework. It is a highly concentrated blueprint.
Right. It's not just a generic motivational quote you'd scroll past on social media.
No, not at all.
It functions as a structural guide for overcoming adversity. So, our mission today is to slow way down. We are going to put this compact text under a microscope and really examine the mechanics of what Canondry is arguing.
Sentence by sentence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core theme is about awakening the inner warrior. But right out of the gate, he asks us to completely discard our standard definition of that word.
Because when most of us hear warrior, the immediate association is external conflict.
Right, swords and shields.
Yeah, we think of combat, armor, a battlefield, fighting off some outside enemy. Canondry pivots away from that entirely. He turns the attention inward, framing the warrior not as someone who fights others, but as a crucial element of your internal architecture.
Internal architecture, I love that phrasing. And he's very specific about how this internal architecture is powered. He points out what the inner warrior is not driven by first.
Right.
He says it is not driven by anger, and it's not fueled by ego. Instead, it's driven by purpose and fueled by vision. But I have to push down on this a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Isn't anger sometimes a really useful catalyst? Like, what about righteous anger when we see an injustice or when we're just fed up with a bad situation? Does this framework leave room for that, or is he suggesting we just abandon anger entirely?
That is a really fair critique. Anger definitely acts as a catalyst. It can absolutely get you off the couch.
Right.
But what's fascinating here is the architectural shift in the long-term fuel source. Think about the mechanics of anger and ego. They are highly reactive states.
Reactive?
You are reacting to a perceived slight and injustice, or in the case of ego, you're reacting to how you believe others perceive you.
So it's like a spark versus an engine.
Precisely. Anger and ego are combustible. They give you a massive, volatile burst of energy to fight an immediate battle.
But it burns hot and fast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As a sustainable daily fuel source, they are incredibly corrosive. If you run your internal engine on ego, you become incredibly fragile because your fuel depends entirely on external validation.
You need an audience.
You need people to look at you, to praise you, or to challenge you so you can prove your dominance. It burns you out, and it often damages everything around you.
Which makes sense when you contrast it with what he offers as the alternative, purpose and vision. If ego is reactive, purpose is proactive. Purpose doesn't require an enemy to exist. It just requires a direction. And vision isn't about looking sideways to see how you stack up against the competition. It's about looking forward at the structure you are actively trying to build.
And that completely changes how you operate on a random Tuesday morning when no one is watching.
Yeah.
When your internal grid is powered by purpose, you have a sustainable, enduring energy source. You aren't waiting for the outside world to provoke you into action.
I want to pause here and ask you, the listener, to run an audit on your own energy right now. Think about the friction points in your life, at work, in your relationships, or with your personal goals. What is currently fueling your drive?
That's a great question.
Are you running on the reactive, exhausting fumes of needing to prove yourself? Or are you operating from a proactive, constructive vision of what you actually want to build? Because making that shift from reactive to proactive fuel is the very first step in this blueprint.
It is a fundamental rewiring of your power grid. But having the right fuel is only part of the equation.
Right. You also need an ignition event. And Canondry moves on to describe exactly what triggers this newly defined warrior to wake up.
And the trigger is, frankly, the last thing any of us actually want.
Oh, absolutely.
We all kind of hope that personal growth will happen while we're sitting on a comfortable couch with a nice cup of coffee.
If only.
Right. But Canondry argues that the warrior within rises specifically when life demands more than comfort. It awakens when challenges stretch your limits.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm being completely honest, when my alarm goes off at 5:30 in the morning for a workout, or when I'm staring down a terrifying work deadline, I don't naturally feel like a warrior being called higher.
No, of course not.
I just feel like a person who really wants to stay in my comfortable bed.
Which is a completely natural human response. We are biologically wired to seek comfort and conserve energy.
Yeah.
We want the comfortable routine, the predictable environment.
Exactly. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, Kanandri is making a profound argument about human design. He states plainly, you were not designed to live small. You were designed to grow, to overcome, to transform.
Let's hover on that word design for a second.
Okay.
It implies an intentional, structural function. If you have a high-performance sports car designed to handle incredibly tight corners at high speeds, and you only ever drive at 5 miles an hour in a flat parking lot because it's safe,
Right.
you aren't really utilizing the car. In fact, you might argue you're neglecting its true engineering.
That is a great way to look at it. The framework is arguing that keeping your life artificially small, insulating yourself from any friction or tension, is actually a violation of your human design.
Wow. A violation.
Yeah. Comfort is fine for resting, but it is a terrible environment for actualization. Your ultimate potential is literally dormant when you are perfectly comfortable. It sleeps through the easy times.
So the discomfort isn't a glitch in the system.
Yeah.
It is the system. He lays out this triad of actions we are designed for: to grow, to overcome, and to transform. That's a very specific sequence.
It is.
You encounter a challenge which forces you to grow the capacity to meet it. Then you actively overcome it. And the result of that whole process is a transformation into a new state.
And this requires a massive cognitive reframe for most of us.
Huge.
When we face a hard time, the default human reaction is to ask, why is this happening to me? Something has gone terribly wrong.
Right, we victimize ourselves.
Exactly. But under this architecture, if you are experiencing discomfort because your limits are being stretched, nothing has gone wrong.
Everything is going right.
Yes, the environment is simply demanding that your internal systems boot up and execute their primary function.
So if you are in the middle of a deeply uncomfortable phase of life right now, maybe it's helpful to view it not as a punishment, but as the precise condition required for your own expansion. The tension you're feeling is just the physical sensation of your limits being stretched.
Right.
And that tension actually creates a gap between where you are and where you need to be.
Which brings us to the bridge.
Yes, which brings us to what I think is the most compelling imagery in this entire excerpt. Here's where it gets really interesting. Kanandri offers this metaphor. He says, resilience is the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming.
Let's really dig into the engineering of that metaphor. A bridge isn't just a path.
No?
A bridge only exists because there is an obstacle, a chasm, a rushing river, a valley. It connects point A to point B.
Point A being who you are today, and point B being who you are becoming. I appreciate that phrasing because it reinforces that we aren't static. We're always in a state of transit. But let's talk about the standard definition of resilience versus this bridge metaphor. We usually hear resilience described as bouncing back, like a rubber band.
Yes, the rubber band idea.
You get stretched by a hard time, and then you snap back to your original shape. You get knocked down, and you stand back up in the exact same spot.
But if we apply Kanandri's metaphor, bouncing back is the exact opposite of resilience.
How so?
Well, think about it. If you are standing on one side of a chasm, and you try to cross, get knocked down, and just bounce back to where you started, you haven't crossed the chasm.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're still on the same side.
You are still at point A. In this framework, resilience is not about returning to your original shape. It is the actual structural material you use to move forward across the obstacle.
Right. It's the transit itself. It's the steel, the cables, the concrete. And if you think about how a bridge actually works, it requires deep, unseen foundations on both sides of the gap to hold the weight of that transit.
Exactly.
When you walk across a suspension bridge, you can feel it sway in the wind. That sway isn't a structural flaw. It's an engineering necessity. The bridge absorbs the tension and distributes the weight so it doesn't snap.
That distribution of weight is exactly what psychological resilience is. Every time you face a hardship and choose to keep stepping forward, you are laying down another plank.
You're building it in real time.
You are. You are reinforcing those steel cables. You are absorbing the tension of the challenge without snapping, which allows you to safely transport yourself from your current identity to the stronger version of yourself waiting on the other side.
Well, let's be real. Standing on the edge of that chasm, looking at the bridge you have to build while the wind is howling, That is a terrifying place to be.
Truly terrifying.
You're going to feel a lot of negative emotions.
Yeah.
And the author anticipates this perfectly. He doesn't pretend the crossing is easy. He gives very specific instructions for how to manage the internal dialogue when things get scary.
And the instructions are incredibly nuanced.
They are. He says, when fear speaks, the warrior listens, but does not surrender. When doubt appears, the warrior acknowledges it, but chooses belief. Let's look at the approach to fear first. Listen, but don't surrender.
This raises an important question. Why listen to fear at all?
Right.
The common cultural advice is usually to crush your fear, ignore it, or act like you aren't afraid.
No fear.
Exactly. But Kanandri takes a much more grounded, pragmatic approach.
Because acting like a giant, terrifying chasm isn't scary, is just delusion. And you can't build a structurally sound bridge on a foundation of delusion. If you ignore fear, you might just walk right off the cliff.
You would. The framework treats fear not as an enemy to be destroyed, but as an informant carrying crucial data.
An informant.
Yes, fear might be saying, hey, this gap is really wide, or you don't have enough materials to cross this yet, or the wind is too strong today.
All valid points.
That is valuable data. The warrior listens to that data and factors it into the architectural plan. But, and this is the vital pivot, the warrior does not surrender to it. Fear is an informant, not a commander.
I think that distinction is brilliant. An informant gives you intelligence. A commander gives you orders.
Yes.
You take the intelligence from fear, you process it, but you do not hand over the steering wheel. You don't let fear make the final executive decision about whether or not you build the bridge.
Exactly.
And he takes a similar approach to doubt. He says to acknowledge doubt, but choose belief.
Notice the lack of violent suppression here, too. You don't have to beat doubt into submission. Doubt is an inevitable part of the human experience.
We all have it.
You are going to look at the distance you have to cover and think, am I actually capable of this? Do I have what it takes? The instruction is simply to look at the doubt, acknowledge its presence in the room, and then make a deliberate pivot.
And the phrasing chooses belief is so active. Belief isn't framed as this magical, warm feeling that just washes over you and makes everything easy.
Yeah, it's not passive.
It is an active lever you have to pull. In the very face of your own doubt, you acknowledge it, and then you deliberately choose to believe in your purpose, your vision, and your design to overcome.
It is a moment-by-moment management of your internal boardroom. You are letting fear and doubt sit at the table and give their reports, but you are retaining the ultimate voting power.
The ultimate voting power. I like that.
However, there is another psychological barrier that often keeps people stranded on the wrong side of the bridge. And it isn't fear of the future, it's the heavy anchor of the past.
So what does this all mean for the baggage we're inevitably carrying? We all have a history of things that didn't work out.
We do.
Kanandri addresses this with two of the most definitive, liberating statements you could ask for. He says, you are not your past mistakes. You are not your temporary failures.
These are profound declarations of identity separation. It is so common for human beings to build their entire self-concept around the things they've gotten wrong.
Definitely.
We look at a business venture that collapsed or a relationship we ruined, and we internalize the event. The internal dialogue shifts from, I failed at that thing, to, I am a failure. We confuse the action with the architect.
But he violently severs that connection. A mistake is an event. It is a thing that happened. It is not your core identity.
No.
And look at the modifier he uses for failures. Temporary. By defining failures as temporary, he strips them of their permanence and their power to define your future.
It takes the sting out.
It really does. A temporary failure isn't a dead end on the bridge. It's just a loose plank you tripped over while crossing.
And if you are not defined by your past mistakes, and you are not defined by your temporary failures, then how should you define yourself?
Right.
He provides the alternative. You are a work in progress, shaped by experience and strengthened by adversity.
A work in progress. That links right back to the idea of who you are becoming.
Yeah.
The architecture is never fully finished. But let's look at the two forces he says are working on us, being shaped by experience and strengthened by adversity.
Okay.
Think about a blacksmith forging a structural steel beam for our bridge. The metal doesn't just magically form itself into a strong, load-bearing shape.
No, it has to be subjected to intense heat, and it has to be repeatedly struck with a heavy hammer.
The heat in the hammer.
The fire and the impact are what alter the molecular structure of the metal, making it hard enough to actually hold weight.
And if that piece of steel had feelings, it would probably hate the fire and the hammer.
Oh, it'd be miserable.
It would feel like it was being tortured. But without the heat and the striking, it just remains a useless, soft lump of metal. By defining us as a work in progress that requires adversity for strength, the author completes the total reframing of the human struggle.
He really does. The mistakes, the temporary failures, the terrifying moments where fear and doubt are yelling at you, they are just the fire and the hammer.
Yeah?
They are the tools shaping your internal architecture into something capable of bearing the weight of your ultimate potential.
Which perfectly sets up his final call to action. After completely redefining the warrior as a creature of purpose, establishing that discomfort is the trigger for growth, showing us the bridge of resilience and freeing us from the anchor of our past, Kanandri issues this command.
The culmination of it all.
Exactly. He says, awaken the warrior.
Yeah.
Step forward. The world needs the strongest version of you.
It is a masterful synthesis of everything we've discussed. If we look at the entire blueprint, we see that internal strength isn't about aggression. It is about sustainable vision. The discomfort isn't a sign you've made a mistake. It is the environment your design requires to grow. Resilience isn't a rubber band. It is the transit system to your future self.
And your past failures are just the raw materials and experiences shaping your ongoing progress.
Yes.
And I think that last line is so crucial. The world needs the strongest version of you. This entire architectural project isn't just about feeling good about yourself.
No, it's bigger than that.
It has external utility. You are building this resilient, purpose-driven self because your family, your community, your specific calling in life actually requires you to be strong enough to bear the load. It's a profound responsibility.
It is. But it is also an incredible privilege to realize that you possess the internal design to handle that responsibility as long as you're willing to step out of your comfort zone and start building.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. We've spent this time unpacking some heavy metaphors. The fuel of purpose, the bridge of resilience, the fire and hammer of adversity.
We covered a lot of ground.
So I want you to look at your own life and identify the biggest, most uncomfortable challenge you are facing right now. The thing that is causing you the most tension. The thing that is stretching your limits to the absolute breaking point.
The chasm.
Exactly. What if that challenge isn't a roadblock meant to stop you? What if it is exactly the raw material you need to finish building your bridge? Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep stepping forward, and we will catch you next time.